Hi, I'm Tim, welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. We like to discuss common brands and models, common collector matchups, the kind of decision points that often define the luxury watch shopping experience. But today on Versus, we're comparing two watches that make for a natural, if counterintuitive comparison. Two watches of similar size, stature, and function. It's the Rolex Oyster Perpetual Datejust Turn-O-Graph against the mid-size Rolex Oyster Perpetual Yacht-Master. This is a matchup of bidirectional rotating bimetal automatic Rolex watches in a versatile case size. Let's start with the veteran. Okay, the Turn-O-Graph. It is an impressive lineage. Now, this watch, originally introduced in 2005, was discontinued after 2010, but the model dates back far longer than that. If we go back to the early 1950s, late 1952, early 1953, Rolex released the reference 6202 Turn-O-Graph, featuring a conventional men's dress watch case size with a bidirectional rotating bezel. It was seen as an ideal companion for travelers and pilots. By the mid-1950s, the Turn-O-Graph had been subsumed into the popular Datejust family, and via standard issue to the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds aerobatic demonstration squadron, it went into the annals of military issue timepieces. And this watch, the Turn-O-Graph, still bears the nickname Thunderbird for precisely that reason. Now, the model here is 36 millimeters in diameter. It's a traditional Datejust in every respect except its exuberant bezel and dial. Now, the timepiece, easy to wear on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. We will get our focus and our ISO back under control here. The camera is still new. The watch, however, is time-tested. 36 millimeters, you can see it's an easy one to wear on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. This is the size that Eisenhower wore, that Churchill wore, and if I were to buy myself a Datejust, this would be the size that I would wear. It's a perfect match, only 11.6 millimeters thick, and the mobile fluted white gold bezel is still quite nicely sloped, so this will fit underneath any shirt, any dress cuff, no matter how tight. Lug to lug, 44.3 millimeters. If you include the solid end links of the bracelet, you can see this wide shot, it's still a very wearable watch. Only 45.5 millimeters lug to lug when you include the bracelet, 20 millimeters between the lugs. I would recommend this watch for a wrist as small as 13 centimeters circumference. The Oyster bracelet on both of these watches features a high degree of finish. Neither one of these was considered an entry-level model in its day. You can see it features the Oyster 3-link design, polished centers, satin-finished flanks. You can see the outer shoulders are also of polish. All removable screws are fixed with, or removable links are fixed with screws. Big gaps on the underside to vent the wrist and avoid pinching skin or pulling hair. The difference between these two watches is going to be the clasp, where the Datejust is considered to be a little bit of a all-arounder, not a pure sports watch. It features a single locking lift lock trigger, whereas on the Yacht-Master you can see you have a lift lock underneath a clamshell lock, so you actually have both. So this is a double sure-tight clasp, whereas what you find on the Datejust is a bit more casual. It's secure, it's just not designed for use in violent circumstances. Now, internally, it's all of high polish. Like I said, neither one of these is an entry-level reference, and you can see that it features the Easy Link system for tool-free adjustment. It's the equivalent of adding or removing one individual removable link. There are also a few anchoring points inside the clasp, which you can see to good advantage from this angle. There are a few anchoring points that you can access with a strap tool to change the location of the base of the bracelet inside the clasp. Jumping back to the case itself, you can see neither one of these is the super case Rolex of modern Submariner, Explorer 2, Sea Dweller, or Deep Sea fame, or infame, depending on your perspective. This is a case that has a great deal in common with the Rolex Date-8, with the Rolex Daytona. It's a handsome, lithe, sinuous, sensuous, wonderfully compound curved shape that tapers elegantly at its end. You can see a twin lock crown right here. That will contrast with the trip lock of the Yacht-Master. The watch featuring a white gold bezel, which is why this is considered to be a white Rollosaur watch. Rolex coming up with an alloy sounding name to describe two metals physically bolted together. Make no mistake, there is no blending of white gold and steel here. They are separate components, but you get that white gold bezel with lacquered numerals. The nice thing about the bezel, however, is that it is what is known as gray gold. It is a solid white alloy, so you don't have to worry about scratching it and seeing milky yellow underneath, or ever having it rhodium replated as you would on a conventional white gold. The dial is chalk white, and it is a dramatic dial. The whiteness of this dial is like the whiteness of the cliffs of Dover, or a white whiteboard. It's also a matte finish, so it doesn't explode as a gloss finish would. It's a dial with a great deal of character. You can see that red varnish hand, the red Turn-O-Graph script, the red date disc. It is not a roulette. All of the individual numbers, both even and odd, are red, and you can see white gold faceted indices outboard. It is a loomed dial, though it can't hold a candle to the Yacht-Master. Inside, Rolex caliber 3135, 48-hour power reserve, COSC chronometer. It features a Rolex Breguet overcoil hairspring, free sprung with a full balance bridge. It is very tough, 100 meters water resistant, quick set and stop seconds. Jump into the Yacht-Master. We have a watch that's much more recent to the collection. The Yacht-Master itself only bowed in 1992, and the midsize model that you see here launched at Basel World 2016 with a combination of what Rolex calls Rolesium, so a primarily steel case, bracelet, and clasp with a solid platinum bezel, and the evolution of the 2016 model year, the arrival of this dark rhodium dial, and it is a sensational dial. A dark rhodium sunburst. This isn't the silvered rhodium that you see on plated white gold or Rolex movements. If you were to cap the case, you would see on the case back there would be a rhodium plated brass caliber. This is a dark rhodium that's almost like a ruthenium finish. The watch wears easily on the wrist. We're going to open up that deploying clasp, both the clamshell and the lift lock system, throw it right on. And now you can see to good effect that this watch, 37 millimeters, nevertheless wears just as compact and comfortable as the 36 millimeter Datejust Turn-O-Graph. It's thinner. This watch, 10.9 millimeters to 11.6, you do notice the difference. You'll also appreciate the fact that the watch wears more compact lug to lug when you only include the lugs themselves. That's 43.6, but when you include the end links, this one actually has a bigger stance across the wrist. It's a straight 47 on the nose across the wrist. So if you want a little bit more wrist presence without going for a 40 millimeter Rolex, this is exactly what the doctor ordered. Zooming out a bit better so you can see it head on, straight on my wrist. You can see it's an excellent fit, and you might not even notice it's a mid-size on a smaller wrist. Jump into the bracelet. As I mentioned before, these two watches are almost identical in their bracelet composition. It's the same materials, it's the same finish. They're almost the exact same size. The only difference is that here you do get that lift lock system internally with the beak and the hook, so you can hear it click shut. You can hear that second click as I lower the clamshell. It's quite secure. You'll also note that there is an easy link system internal to this clasp. You have the removable individual links, and you have the different anchoring points inside the clasp that allow you to change the stationing of the bracelet. So you have quite a bit of adjustability built in. You just have a little bit more security. In every other respect, these bracelets and clasps are functionally identical. Now the case is different than what you'll see on the Datejust. I'm going to do my best to get everything in focus, and then I'm going to move them so you can see them literally head to head or crystal to crystal. There is a flatted foot to the case of the Yacht-Master that's in common with the larger Yacht-Master and the Daytona, whereas you can see that the Datejust, it has more in common with the Day-Date. It features a tapered lug profile. There is that difference in the flatted foot versus the taper, and you can see the difference in thickness. It is something that's pronounced when you compare them directly. Now jumping to the bezel itself, it's simply richer, beautifully executed, all of platinum. You can see there's no anodized insert, no ceramic insert here. Bidirectional rotating, it has a crisp detent. The Turn-O-Graph has a gummy bezel feel. You don't really sense the individual detent as you move it in its increments because it doesn't have one, it just slides. This actually has a spring-loaded detent that substantially improves the feel and the experience. It's also handsomely made. You can line it up with that minute hand. Now you've got impromptu 0 to 60 minute timer. Note the difference between the raised and relieved indices, the triangular index, and the numerals. They're polished on a blasted base. You'll also note that the knurling itself is shallower but sharper, which makes it easy to grip if your hands are wet, sweaty, or gloved. The dial is sensational. Not only are the indices larger, so you get more white gold, all the indices and hands are white gold, but you also get more lume, and a lot more lume. You're going to see that very clearly when we do our lume shot. The Cyclops eye has been scaled down. For once, it doesn't seem to dominate the dial of a sub 40 millimeter Rolex watch because it is properly sized and everything about this watch is nicely scaled. In isolation, you cannot tell that this isn't the 40 millimeter Yacht-Master. Beautifully executed. I mentioned there's a difference in the crown. This one features a triplock crown, so though both watches are rated to 100 meters water resistant, I strongly suggest that you consider this one to have a larger margin of error, as the triplock crown is a substantive difference, no joke. I bet if you were to test both of these to destruction, this would be the one to fall last. Inside the case, Well, all has changed compared to the Datejust. Caliber 2236 bowed in 2014 in the Ladies Pearlmaster. It's significant because it has a longer power reserve of 55 hours, but also because it served as the launch platform for Rolex Siloxy, Rolex's first silicone hairspring. It's kind of an undersold benefit. Rolex rarely mentions it, but you get all of those anti-magnetic benefits, and it is substantial materials innovation in a company that is known for being conservative to a fault. It also has a handsome face. If you're going to give a face to your mid-sized watch and your experimental hairspring, it may as well be this one. Dark and intense with just enough light lume and those cyan blue accents to pop against the base of rhodium. This is a truly striking watch. Let's talk about the Thunderbird and its advantages. Well, first and foremost, real history. I can't say that any fighter pilots have ever worn a Yacht-Master midsize, but I can tell you for a fact that back in the 1950s, at the height of the Cold War, U.S. fighter jocks were wearing these things while pulling high G maneuvers, and the fact is, this watch still retains all of the aura that comes with that one-time association. You can hold this thing head-to-head against the likes of a Breitling Navitimer and an Omega Moonwatch, and it belongs in that company. I'll also mention this is not a junior variant of anything. Even though there is a larger Datejust, this came first. This is the original. It's not a smaller offshoot or little brother in any way. This is the full-size Datejust. The 41 and the 2, those are the oversized Datejusts. So this isn't anybody's stepbrother, little brother, or cousin. This is the real deal, whereas the Yacht-Master does feel like a compromise for smaller wrists. Now, let's talk about a better buy. You want this watch? You can only get it pre-owned. This went out of production in late 2010. Today, the going rate for this white Rollosaur steel gold combo is about $5,750, which is to say, compared to new for the $11,050 Yacht-Master, this is almost half price. So this is a good deal. This is the buy, and it's not going to depreciate anymore. I'll also mention that you have your dial options. With the same reference, the combination of steel and white gold bezel, you can get a white dial, you can get a black dial, you can get a blue dial. There are other metal options available, both yellow gold and rose gold, with several dials in their own right. So there's more variety if you want to go with a Turn-O-Graph Datejust than if you go with the mid-size Yacht-Master. Also, I would say that the combination of the red date and the red accents on the chalk white dial means that this one is just a little bit more playful and cheerful and offbeat than the Yacht-Master, and I appreciate all of those qualities. I'll also mention, despite the fact that the Yacht-Master is nominally a larger watch and broader link-to-link, somehow this one has greater wrist presence. When you put them side by side, this one just gets more attention. It looks larger. It appears to be broader across the wrist. There's some trick of the eye going on, but this does appear to be the more impressive watch on the wrist. Now, let's talk about the advantages of the Yacht-Master. This is the 268 622, a reference you don't see too often, a combination of handsome features, handsome scaling, and a little bit of tech, and it's the tech that represents the first advantage, as you have a silicone hairspring and a longer power reserve, 55 hours here versus 48 hours on the Datejust. Also important to note, this watch falls in the era of the superlative chronometer, so every one of these has been adjusted in 6 positions as a fully adjusted watch to make timing of -2 + 2 per day or better, whereas the Datejust, discontinued since late 2010, was never part of that superlative chronometer scheme. And, of course, this watch, still available new, comes with a 5-year warranty. So on both counts, tech and warranty advantage Yacht-Master. Let's talk about lume. This watch wins it running away, Secretariat style, and you'll see that at the end of the video. Also, a beefier sports clasp. It's not a whole lot more security. I can't imagine either of these clasps ever flying open, but if you want to be absolutely certain in the security of your investment during vigorous activity, the clamshell and the lift lock is a more secure arrangement. I'll also mention that this watch just seems richer in the hand. First, the timepiece has a full platinum bezel, not white gold. Second, when you compare that chalk white matte lacquer of the Datejust to the dark rhodium sunburst of this one with the larger white gold plots for the indices, it simply looks more expensive. It is more expensive, but that's a good thing. It looks its price. You get that for which you've paid. You simply get a more refined and expensive looking watch with the Yacht-Master. I'll also mention that the watch, being substantially slimmer with what I believe to be a narrower and more elegant case, has more grace. This is a timepiece that does manage to pull off the sharp creased suit look, so you can easily wear this with formal attire. You can easily wear either one with formal attire, but this one is going to be that 100 out of 100, whereas the Datejust is maybe a 97 out of 100. For pure elegance at the limit, this one has a slight edge. I'll also mention that it just scales so well you'll never notice. Even though it is technically the mid-size Yacht-Master, it's technically more advanced than the full-size Yacht-Master, and on a wrist of my size, a wrist of 13.5 to 16 centimeters, you're not even going to notice this isn't the full-size watch. It features all the refinement and then some of the full-size 40, so just go with this. Between the two, I prefer this one. It seems more expensive, it seems more graceful, it's more technically appealing, and I prefer the combination of dark rhodium with cyan, platinum and steel over white gold and steel with chalk white and red. So this would be my choice. I'm more of a yachtsman than a aviator, and although I lack both aircraft and yacht, I can identify more with the Yacht-Master. Plus the fact that it's better loomed means that from a practical standpoint, I'll be able to use this watch more easily, more often. Let me know, which one of these would you make your own? And you can count the black and the blue dial versions of this alongside the white. You don't have to go by the version that I'm showing you here. And we're back. Datejust Turn-O-Graph, Yacht-Master. You can see the Yacht-Master with the chromolite just edges out the Datejust with its small amounts of luminova.